I'm trying not to do a voice because I want to read this and then my brain's just like, do a voice. All right.
Welcome to the United States of Paranormal Podcast. Sit down and buckle up for an enlightening ride through everything cryptid, creepy, and paranormal.
I'm your host, Logan Cothran, and sitting next to me, the Scully to my Mulder, is Matt Frisby.
Hello, everyone.
And sitting next to him, Boze.
Hi.
He's kind of like Cher, how there is no first or last name, it's just Boze. How are y'all doing today?
Well, I've been watching spooky YouTube all day, getting ready for tonight. So I'm looking forward to what we have to hear about.
Yeah, today all I did was listen to audiobooks and cry at work. So it was a normal Friday.
You just, like, he's being so soft-spoken, and, like, if you know him in person, he is very much not. So it's like a mood he's trying to set, like a low-level, sensual mood he's trying to set.
Look, it's called building up.
What I don't know is if that was an ad read or a cry for help.
Probably both.
Hey, everybody, check out Audible for your latest audiobooks. Also, I'm very lonely.
Don't forget to hit up Boze afterwards on his ASLR. Is it ASLR?
ASMR.
ASMR YouTube videos where he stirs mac and cheese and talks about his crippling loneliness. Okay, guys, I'm going to give you the rundown since we're new here and you're new here, clearly. What this is a podcast that delves into everything creepy and spooky in the Hoosier state, the state of Indiana, known for cold and corn and great Amish baking. Any you boys ever been to Indiana?
Nope, can't say I ever have.
I actually was born there and lived there until I was like 10, and then came back later on in life with a buddy of ours. Great summers, crippling cold winters. I'm talking gets in the negatives. Would not recommend the winters.
So what I want to know is how much spooky stuff can happen in one state?
A lot more than you would think.
Like how many episodes are we looking at here? Like 10, 15,
Well, you know,
200?
if we manage to scrape the bottom of the barrel, we'll move on to another state or just everywhere. But, I mean, you'll be surprised. You know what? Talking about this, I thought the same thing when I listened to one of our fellow podcasts, Murder Nerds, is when they said they were going to be handling cold cases in the state of Indiana and murder cases. And then I Googled murder cases in Indiana, and I quickly wanted to cry to myself about how many episodes they could have just off that alone. So, like I said, you got to think about it. For like how many people you know, let's say like you talk to 5 people, I'm going to say at least 2 out of 5 of those people have something that they could tell you about something spooky that happened to them. I mean, in this room right here, I know me personally, I have some paranormal stories I could tell. How about you, Matt?
I mean, nothing
bizarre ever happened to you unexplainable?
I've had uncomfortable moments, but nothing to fill a podcast with by any means.
But do you have your own spooky, unexplainable story, though?
Spooky, yes. Unexplainable, not necessarily. With a previous employer that I had, I worked for a theater of the performing arts. And I was working late one night, as I often would during that period of time. And when I went to leave, I had to go lock up everything in the building. So I locked up the front, and then I went and took a lap around backstage to make sure everything was locked up. And as I opened a door and stepped into the workshop backstage, somewhere deep within the backside of the theater, I heard a door slam. And that was quite disconcerting. But aside from that, I mean, you know, that could be explained with air pressure. But it's still... I turned around, said fuck the rest of the theater, and walked my happy ass out the front door.
And that's how you survive a horror movie. Also, that was from our town skeptic, Matt Frisby. How about you, Boze? You got anything that spooky or unexplainable that has vexed you in your life?
So I don't really have much of a spooky story, but more of a semi-slasher film type setting.
Whole nother genre, but all right.
I know, but it's about the closest thing I have. So it was one of my first weeks on the job. I'm doing ride-alongs with another person.
To clarify, ride-alongs, he's not a police officer. He's a Spectrum employee.
Yeah. So we went to this person's house, and porch lit up. It's kind of like it looked almost like a log house when we got there. And this is just in the middle of the city, so it's not in the woods or anything. But as I'm walking up, I notice it looks like blood or red paint kind of leading up to the door. And they had scratch marks along the wood paneling leading to it. And then when we walked inside the house, someone had a knife and they inscribed Bible verses all over the walls of their house.
You never go good with Bible verses carved into anything. That is clearly a pack your bag up and get the hell out of there because Spectrum's not paying you enough type situation right there.
Yeah, Bible verses anywhere
But in
outside
a Bible,
of a Bible is
Red flags.
usually, yeah, absolutely.
Well, they even tacked up pages of the Bible on the wall along with the scratch marks with the knife.
because they got to have something to look at while they do it. You don't want to. I mean, you're carving something on a wall with a knife. That's really permanent. You don't want to make a mistake.
Yeah, I wonder how you pick what font you're going to use to carve Bible verses into the
No,
wall.
fucking carving stuff into a wall is its own font on its own. But yeah, so basically, like I said, we're just gonna dive into paranormal investigations, stories, cryptids, all your creepies and everything like that. Makes me wonder if Indiana has its own like Mothman or Bigfoot, like something specific to them. Have to look into that later on.
I had to say, I don't know. You're the hoser here. Tell us.
It's Hoosier, and I only lived there
Hoosier.
until I was 10, which didn't really give me a lot of.
Hoosier or Hoosier?
Hoosier.
Hoosier.
It's almost
The
French.
the only
Jure.
like I was never told any cryptid stories or anything like that from being aged born to 10. Like it wasn't really. It's probably some like corn based monster or something, or like the were shucker.
Don't you have like mountain devils in Indiana?
There's no mountains in Indiana, man. I promise
I
you
don't think
that.
it's something else. Do we have anything in this part of Texas?
Parlingua.
Okay, but anything real, not something you made up in this area.
It's real,
I know
half
in
alligator, half
old
man.
Louisiana they have the Rougarou.
And I'm pretty sure everywhere has chupacabras. Everywhere.
Hey, we have Bigfoot myths down here.
Bigfoot myths are everywhere.
Yeah.
But we're diving in a little bit far in here. But basically,
Yeah, when do we turn into a cryptid podcast?
I mean, we'll get there eventually. But this week, not cryptid, we've got your plain Jane run of the mill ghost and demons and possession. And it's not just your run of a mill like he said she said story. This got national and worldwide coverage. So we're gonna dive into the haunting of the Ammons family, or AKA known as the Demon House, or 200 Demon House, that took place in Gary, Indiana, and started in 2011 in the month of November when the Ammons family moved into this house. Now, have either of you ever heard much about the Ammons case or the Demon House?
No, but to be fair, I don't follow a lot of hauntings and things. I am a pussy. And
Fair enough.
although I consider myself on the skeptic side, I still get rightfully and properly spooked from things, and don't consume much of the content outside of the heartthrob supernatural version of spooky events.
And boy, do those boys throb your heart. Brandon?
So, for me, like Matt, I am on the skeptic side of things, but I would actually be willing to stay a night in a haunted house, even though I scream like hell when playing scary games.
I wouldn't be able to. I would stay in the nights like one thing. Like if I have people with me and it's like we're not trying to sleep, I would probably do it. But if it's like you're trying to sleep and you're by yourself, I wouldn't be able to do it because just like any bump or anything would just have me like wide awake constantly.
Like I think I would sleep comfortably in a haunted house, like a real haunted house.
We'll have to test that sometime.
I don't sleep comfortably in old houses. I
You
definitely
don't
would
sleep
not
comfortably
sleep.
in general.
Okay, that's not fair, and that's for a medical podcast. But I will say, I had a grandmother and grandfather. They were a couple. They came as a unit. That they lived in a house that was built, I think, around the Civil War, And super high ceiling, super creaky old house. It terrified me as a child. And we'd always stay in this large pink room. And I would just lay there awake, terrified of every single sound that old house would make.
No. For further explanation of this house, it was also a B&B.
That makes it so much more spooky. I'm glad you added that.
No, not like I'm saying, it wasn't that
Okay,
spooky.
so
For all those millennials and Gen Zers, a B&B is a bed and breakfast.
quick question. When watching a horror movie about a haunt, what is something added to said horror movie that always makes it so much scarier and more full of anxiety?
Background noise.
Yeah, noise and music.
Okay, I was looking for children.
Oh, well, you asked the wrong guy.
Specifically, 3 children are involved in this from age 7 to 9 and 12. 2 boys, the 7 and 9-year-old are boys, and the daughter is a 12-year-old. And this is also in a household with no father figure. There's the mother and the grandmother. So, like I said, it leans into your horror movie really, really quick there, because in a lot of horror movies, if the dad is there at all, he's a dick. He's always the one that's like, doesn't believe it, even when shit's getting thrown across the wall. They always make the dad a dick. Or he's just non-existent there, which also leans into the whole it stereotype, but makes it scarier because there's no patriarchy. There's no man there to give that false sense of safety, which I'm not saying is okay, but that is definitely the gist of what they go for when they do stuff like that. But it was a rather large family. Like I said, 3 kids, mom and grandmother moving into this house in Gary, Indiana. They're kind of low on their. You've seen pictures of the house. It's not great. It's nothing fancy. That they're low on their funds. They got a place. It's one of those things where they're in, and like a lot of people are gonna be like, "Oh, if it was that bad, why didn't you just leave?" Well, those people have never been living paycheck to paycheck and being like, "Motherfucker, I can't leave because where am I going?" Because for one person, maybe you could go live in your car, you could go stay at a friend's house, but where are you gonna go with your mom, your grandmother, and 3 kids? Like that's not easy to just swing and get into, you know. But like I said, it started off pretty normal. I mean, they were there for most of November, nothing happened. And then December, it starts with something that's also associated with hauntings and poltergeist type activity, flies. Lots and lots of flies. And mind you, you're like, oh, flies, that can happen anytime. This is hordes of flies on a screened in porch in December in Indiana. I don't know if you guys know a lot about insects, but flies, mosquitoes, and all that, they don't do cold. And it's not just like they're in the house, they're in a screened-in porch in Indiana, where I'm telling you, it can get to like 12 degrees or below, you know? And they're just drones. And they kill them, and they kill them, and they just keep coming back until one day they just stop. And I mind you, they checked for, they're like, maybe there's something they're eating, like a corpse, like an animal died somewhere. Nothing. But one day they just stop showing up. And when they stop showing up, they think, oh, that's fine. It was weird, but it's fine. But around that time, every night, past midnight, they could hear the audible footsteps of somebody, what sound like somebody walking up from their basement stairs. Now, around here, we don't have a lot of basements because low water level, floods and everything. But up in Indiana, basement for days. One, you know, tornadoes and stuff are more happen there. And like I said, they don't have like flood plains like we do, so they can have basements. But they would hear in the single story house, they're hearing walking on steps coming from the basement. And I tell you what, like basements are a good source of dread for just about anybody I could think of, because it just at an early age of childhood, that's just scary. It's low quality lighting. You got to go downstairs. You can't see everywhere. It's just spooky. And on top of that, when the stepping would stop, they would hear some nights the door knob rattle and some nights the door open. And not quickly, slow burn open. And the one night that their mother decided that she was going to check it out, she swore she saw a shadowy figure walk back down the basement. And when she got closer, she found wet boot print going down into the basement. Now, mind you, being a smart woman, she closed the door and promptly went back to bed.
Oh, God.
Because let me tell you, if I'm home alone if that basement door locks, I am locking it and I am leaving. But she has kids she doesn't want to frighten. She's clearly like, I don't know what I saw. Maybe these boot prints were from earlier in the day. You know, like the stuff you tell yourself to just make you feel better.
Yeah,
You're like, no, somebody,
rationalizations.
that's one of the kids' boot marks or this or that. And then just went back to bed.
See, some of this is also reminding me, though, of those stories you hear about people who will, like, live in crawl spaces and stuff inside people's homes, and no one knows about it for, like, months or even years
Yeah.
sometimes.
I started a while back watching a YouTube show called Mr. Ballin, and he talks about cases and stuff, and like he reads them back and everything. The amount of actual cases where people were secretly living in people's houses is horrifying.
Yeah, that could be a podcast in itself.
It is. And it's that, like, I was like, how many times could this happen? And then a month into Mr. Ballin and 12 stories of somebody living in somebody's attic or crawl space later, I'm just like, good Lord. If I ever go in my kitchen and a spoon's not where it's supposed to be, and I grill everybody in there, and I'm talking to everybody. I'm talking from my girlfriend down to my 3-year-old daughter. I'm grilling everyone. You put the spoon here, and everybody comes back with a no, we're leaving. I'm not doing it.
Burning it down.
I'm not
We're
doing it.
done.
I am not being watched by the homeless guy in the crawl space above me or the wall children. I'm not doing it.
Moral of the story is no, absolutely. Right as you go to buy a house, learn every inch of that house.
And not to mention
thoroughly.
that, if you have spare keys, don't leave them in the house because people make copies of them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's sketchy. But back to the Ammons family, not our own problems. So this happens. So now, when this becomes a regular occurrence, does it just become like part of the white noise in your household, or does it like considerably bug you? Like if you every night, like clockwork, you're hearing this, is it make it worse for you, do you think, or do you think it just becomes normal?
See, for me, I have cats.
Okay, well, let's mind you don't have cats. You have a grandma and 3 children.
Yeah, you're talking about something you can easily justify on.
Do you just get tired of it and you just put it in the back of your mind, or does every time it happens you're filled with that same dread?
Well, yeah, like, well, I mean, what do you do? I mean, if you're not the type of person that you could easily just sell a house and move, like you're trapped in that situation. Like if I started noticing spooky stuff in my house, I couldn't just, all right, we're gone. What do you? Yeah, no. I guess maybe you do try to rationalize it. Maybe you just do whatever you can to ignore it as best you can.
Or maybe this is one of those times when you have a seance and you try and make the apparition pay rent.
Well, yeah, because always calling on the demons always makes it better. I mean, me personally, if it was me, and like I said, like Matt says, I don't have the means to just up and leave. I would be cranking the fan up to 3, putting on episodes of Friends with the volume high up, and just locking my door and just being like, nope, it's nothing. Just, try as much as you can. If it's just like, if it's Casper taking a fucking stroll at night, up the stairs, open the door, getting a glass of milk and going back down to his fucking basement, we're golden, okay? But the moment my doorknob starts rattling and it's not my kid, our family might be living in the Jeddah.
Now I'm hoping your kids actually hear this and they just start to fuck with you at night now.
Oh, well, then they can go live in the basement with Casper. But for the family, unfortunately, it didn't stop there. So if they were ignoring it, it wasn't for long, because shortly after that, other people were starting to notice things. The family had a wake at the house that lasted until well into 3 a.m. Because, family and friends come over and they're grieving and having reminiscing, and people stayed late. Well, that night, one of the nieces were upstairs with the daughter sleeping, and they start hearing mama getting screamed out loud. And I'm talking, this is multiple adults. And they hear the screaming, and they run upstairs, and they all claimed that the 12-year-old daughter was floating. In her sleep, not responsive, floating, while her cousin was beside her mind, screaming for her mother. Now, this is the part that bugs me a little bit, because it's me, my kid's floating. Instinctively, I'm trying to grab my kid. Instinctively, these adults start praying. But I guess that's also, if you come from a religious background, that might be your go-to. God's your comfort food,
Yeah.
So maybe they do. And they say as they're praying, the kid starts to slowly descend. And when the kid hits the mattress, she wakes up and she has no recollection. Safe to say that these family members are on record saying they left the house then and never came back.
I mean, I'm glad they didn't try to rationalize that and stay
But it's nothing.
afterwards.
She just does that. That's fine.
Oh, yeah, it's kids, you
No,
know.
they-
All the sugar, they get really hyper and start to float.
They promptly left and did not return. And this would be the case for basically anybody that would visit them. Okay, so like people come, something spooky would happen, they wouldn't come back. So this keeps happening. Your house gets lonely and lonelier. The people you can reach out to is less and less. Like you can't have comfort in people coming and staying with you or hanging out with you because nobody wants to come there anymore. So basically your house becomes a prison of solidarity. It's just you and your immediate family that are all being slowly traumatized by these happenstances. I mean, you get woken up with all your family standing around you praying, looking horrifying, and you don't remember shit, and they're like, you were floating. I mean, I imagine that doesn't set well with 12-year-old Logan. I don't know about you guys, but I'm like, it might be hard to sleep ever again in that house after that.
Or you think you're magic.
I mean, if you want to lean into magic, sure. Like, I'm Chris Angel now. But it things just kept escalating. And for the most part, seemed to be targeting the children. And like I said, for me, the horror movies are always so much worse when there's creepy kids. And these were definitely slowly becoming creepy kids. The mother and the grandmother would catch them every now and then with scary, sadistic grins on their face and mumbling in low tones that they could barely understand. And they could not, when they did get close to them, they could not understand. At one point, their uncle came over and the 7-year-old child started chanting something with a sadistic grin on his face in a language that the uncle was like, I don't know what it was, but started chanting it. And the moment the 7-year-old stopped, the exact moment he stopped, his brother picked it up right where he dropped it off instantly in the same room.
It was sim talk.
And then, yeah, that's what it was. And then the sister walks in the room to ask them what's going on. And then the middle brother stops and sister picks it right up.
See, to me, this sounds like a case where the kids are just a bunch of little assholes. They know about how the adults are freaking out about the story.
That's true. I hear about those little asshole kids that levitate on purpose to scare adults.
I'll tell you, they get hyped up on sugar. They start their genes start vibrating super fast, and they just take off.
But after this, the uncle tries to hold one of the boys and ask him what he's doing. And when he grabs a hold of one of the boys, the brother looks at the other brother and says, "Are you ready to die, brother?" And that's his exact words. And the brother says, "I'm ready to die, brother. Are you?" And then it drops. They're back to normal. Why are you holding me? Why are you touching me? And then the uncle promptly leaves. Understandably. I mean, I don't expect my uncle to stay there and be like, let's talk through this. I'd be like, I'm gone.
Sorry, I'm not your uncle anymore,
Fair
kids.
enough. Now, a lot of stuff like this, people would be like, with these happenstance and everything, people would be like, clearly, this family wants attention. But the thing is this family was trying to keep this under wraps. They weren't talking in news places. They weren't spreading it around. The only people who were spreading around were the people coming to their house and be like, don't go back to that house. It's the devil's house. Clearly, they weren't trying to like draw in attention. Now, they did start getting attention, though, in a negative manner from child services. Because when this stuff progressed and the kids were showing signs of possession more and more, the mother was keeping them home from school. So CPS got involved because 3 children missing consistent amount of school, they'll check on them. Okay, and they take the kids. They want to do like a welfare check.
Wait, I'm sorry. Quick question. Why did they start taking them out of school?
The mother thought that like if they're showing optimum signs of possession, she didn't want to put them on the bus. But also, maybe there's more to it. Maybe the mom needed them. You know, maybe she was scared to be alone. Maybe she felt better with numbers in the house because she wasn't leaving the house.
Oh, she didn't have a day job or anything?
No, it was kind of a collecting off the government type deal.
Okay.
So maybe it was comfort in numbers. Or maybe it was one of the kids were acting up, so she kept them there. But either way, it got the attention of the school, which got the attention of the CPS, which led to them wanting to do welfare checks and everything. And what this led to was them going to a local hospital where they were going to have the kids looked over, like a good once over and everything. because the kids have talked to teachers and stuff, talking about how their mom thinks their house is as demons and stuff. Also red flags. And at this point, the brothers are frequently attacking each other. So they are showing marks and stuff. But from the sister, the grandma, and everybody else, they are like, no, they are attacking each other. They are violently attacking one another and leaving discernible marks on them. So they take the kids to a hospital in order to check them out. Now, when they're checking them out, they're also wanting to do psych evaluations because the mom clearly thinks ghost. Everybody thinks ghost. So, I mean, clearly they're like, we need to see if the mom has mental issues that she is pushing onto her children, right? So they do what they normally do. They separate. They take mom from the room, take her to another room, okay? They keep the brothers in a room, and they take the sister to another room, all right? Well, the CPS caseworker, who I've got her name right here, Valerie Washington, and the hospital psychologist, Willie Lee Walker, are in the room with the two boys when the two boys start grinning, like the scary grins that they talked before. And the 7-year-old starts acting up really bad. He's saying stuff like, I'm here to kill. I'm tired of waiting. I'm here to kill. And the grandma's like trying to hold his hand and like, listen, this isn't you. This isn't you. And then this is where it gets weird because normally with stuff like this, you just have hearsay, right? You never have professionals or anything there. This is when the 7-year-old walks up the goddamn wall in the hospital in front of two people that have two very serious jobs that need to be taken seriously. We have the CPS caseworker and we have the hospital psychologist. Now, mind you, both of them watch a 7-year-old child walk up this wall, and what do you think they do?
Ask him to do a backflip.
They both promptly ran out of the room and to the doctor, screaming to the doctor what's going on. They watched this kid walk up the wall, and they ran. They left him alone with his grandmother, who did not run, mind you.
Oh, this is just a normal thing they do.
This is not your run of the mill like, oh, they said this, they said this. They are on record. They are on the CPS caseworker wrote this down in her official paperwork that she turned into her boss that pays her paycheck. And so did the psychologist. He wrote it down in his report and was on the CPS case report, signed his name and everything, saying that they saw this child walk up a wall. Not run up a wall, not parkour shit, walk up a wall. So we have two, like I said, these people have jobs that they need to be taken seriously. Nobody wants the caseworker coming in and be like, I have to take your kids away and be like, oh, says the lady that saw a ghost. Or a hospital psychologist being like, I saw a kid walk up a wall. That doesn't really scream professionalism. Now, when they went to go tell the doctor in another room is like, clearly, this didn't happen. He's like, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. You guys are pulling my leg. Walks in there, and the kid that is now snapped to it is back to normal and is like, hey, kid, walk up the wall again. And the kid's like, I didn't walk up a wall. And he was like, no, walk up the wall again. They said you walked up the wall. Let's do it again. And, of course, the kid can't. Albeit,
yeah, kid, do a backflip right now.
That was the doctor's attitude, which I will give it to the doctor. He wasn't in there. He didn't see it. And that's one of two things that hospital saw, because there was another instance where hospital employees claimed that they saw the smaller boy get thrown across the room with nothing there to throw him. Okay, so I have these case files. I'll actually pull it up and I will read you the part of this, because I actually went and dug to get the case files, okay? So we got here, let's see here. Okay, so we got medical staff reported that while the children were at the primary doctor's office, the medical staff reported they observed blank, they put his name out, be lifted and thrown into a wall with nobody touching him. Gary Police Department went to the home, and the home has multiple religious shrines, Bibles throughout the house, plenty of food, and the home was clean. Okay, let's see here. Later, after the throwing incident, evening, the caseworker, Miss Washington, and the psychologist and the family were in a room discussing the placement for the 7-year-old when the 7-year-old began to growl again and stare into the other kid's eyes. Facial expression changed, and he began to have a weird smile on his face. As he charged his grandmother's stomach and headbutted her, several times until she grabbed his hands and started praying. The moment she started praying, the boy at this time says, it's time to kill. I will kill you. And start staring around the room, had the weird grin on his face again, and began to walk backwards while the grandmother tried to hold his hands. And he walked up the wall backwards while holding the grandmother's hands. Never let go. He flipped over and landed on his feet in front of the grandmother and sat down in the chair. A few minutes later, he looked up as if he was back to himself. Both Miss Washington and the psychologist fled the room.
So what I'm hearing is he did do a backflip.
He did a flip. It didn't say backflip, but he did do a flip, and he stuck the landing.
So the first thing I would be curious about would be, is that an actual document or is that something someone made up?
No, this is the actual pulled from the Indiana. This is document ID 2975619. Anybody can pull up this document on the CPS's website.
So that did come from the CPS.
It did come from
website.
the CPS themselves, yes. It's signed and everything, and it is in their official database. Anybody can pull it up like I did. So it is, like I said, these are two people that jobs are very serious, going on government paperwork, claiming they saw a kid walk up a wall. Now, for me, I mean, that's impressive because you don't get a lot of like government issued paper being like spooky shit, you know? But that's what we got here.
At least if the feds are willing to show you.
Yeah. Now, at this point, local law enforcement is getting pretty regularly involved with this household. And there is, at first I was like, oh, it's just a cop. But it was the police captain, Charles Austin. And at this point of this case, 37-year veteran of the Gary Force. All right. This man thoroughly believes in the paranormal now from all these things he's witnessed. He was there when the kid was chunked, and he witnessed that. And he witnessed some stuff go down the house because with another caseworker, because Mrs. Washington would not come back to the house after what she witnessed at the hospital, came with him and two police officers to the house, also with the local father, which I've also got his name here, Michael Minot, went to the house to kind of give it a look down. Well, in their house, they noticed, they went down to the basement, and the cop, the 37-year-old veteran captain of the police force, like, he never felt like he wasn't being watched while he was in the house. He had an unshakable feeling of like something watching him, especially in the basement. And when he gets down the basement, he thought, it's weird, the whole basement is concreted, right? Except for under the basement stairs. It's dirt. And he just there was some candles sitting in a tin underneath the stairs. And so this made him, he's like, I wonder why. So him and the other police officer dug a 6 foot by 4 foot hole, 6 foot wide, 4 foot deep hole in there. And while they're digging on this ground that's underneath the stairs, they found a pair of female white panties buried about 3 feet deep and toddler socks and a bar. They took that stuff, evidence bagged it up, and then put the dirt back.
A bar?
A bar, like a metal bar.
Oh, okay.
Like a long, and they were all at the same level. They found the panties, socks, bar, all at the same level. And the weird part was that the socks had the heels cut out of them, both of them. I mean, that might not be here or there, but it was weird, though, right? You find panties buried underneath stairs in a house, that's questionable. Toddler socks with them in a bar, that's weird. And the family said they didn't put those candles there. They said they've always been there. Upon that, go ahead.
I was going to say, so again, go back to there's someone else living in that house.
Or somebody did something hinky back in the day and that maybe they concreted it all because there's other things buried underneath there. And didn't get the stairs because it's harder to pour behind stairs, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super familiar with basements. I mean, is not concreting...
There's a lot of dirt floor basements. That's a thing. And the apartment I lived in was an old plantation house in Indiana. It had a dirt floor basement. It is a thing. But the fact that you concreted the whole basement and left out one part, it's odd. But after that, they went upstairs and into the living room, and they noticed that the blinds were leaking. Like an oil. Just like consistently leaking an oil. The CPS worker touched the oil. And shortly after, the hand she touched it with lost all coloration, started to hurt. She promptly left. She decided to leave. Well, they wanted to know if maybe the grandmother was putting oil on things because they were at one point anointing things with olive oil. So what they did is they wiped down the blinds with paper towels. They didn't touch it with their hands. The cops and the father did. Father, when I say father, I'm talking about like clergy, like the church.
Yeah, the priest.
They wiped it down, and they're like, we want to make sure that she's not doing it or they're not doing it. So they stuck a Q-tip in the door. They didn't tell the family what they're doing, and they walked away from it, and that was the only entrance in that room, was that room.
Mm-hmm.
They go back in 25 minutes later, Q-tip's still in the door, oil pouring down the blinds again, just dripping. They don't know what. Now, the priest himself, the father, says that he thinks it's signs of a significant haunting activity. It's fluid that's coming from the negative energy in the house and is being produced here. And he also says that's why that it harmed the CPS worker. She got on her hand. It's negative energy. That's what's making it such negative energy that it is producing an ooze. Like like your ectoplasm, like your stuff you've seen in horror movies and everything. Yeah, spooky goop. There's that. So the father, he wants to perform an exorcism, all right? He's part of the church and everything, wants to perform an exorcism. But everybody knows to be able to perform an exorcism, you have to have the approval of the church or the bishop of the reigning church, right? Now, at first, they tell him no. They just don't. They just no. Well, then he was like, well, okay, then I want to do a minor rite, which is like a watered-down exorcism. It's like an exorcism light. And they're like, the church, the bishop tells him straight up, he's like, then you need to go talk to another father that has done an exorcism and ask him for the scripture that you need to do the minor rite. He tries to do so, and I don't know if there's history here or what, but the one he went to straight up told him, look it up on the internet.
Hey, Father, can I get some diet exorcism?
And he was like, get your own.
We call it Exorcism Zero now.
So he doesn't say how he got the material, but he performs a minor rite on the house. Like I said, basically exorcism light. It's got all that great exorcism-y flavor without the added calories.
He pulls up a Reddit page.
He probably did, honestly.
r/exorcism
and stuff and also in doing so they he this is the part that weirds me out. He salted around the house, the walls, and that had them burn sage and burn sulfur. Now, mind you, I've never heard of anybody using sulfur to get rid of demons or anything. The lore for that is that like when demon presence is around, the smell of sulfur lets you know the demons are there, because it is like sulfur's burning in hell, so you can smell the presence of hell. But also the weird thing is that he's salting the walls. In every lore, salt is used to keep spirits away. But if you're salting the walls of the house, the only thing it seems like you're doing is you're keeping it there. They're trapped now. If they're in the house and you're salting around the premise of the house, then you're just locking the family in there with the whatever's in there. Now it's pissed too because it can't go outside or whatever, you know? But that just seems to make things worse. Stuff amps up. The kids are getting more violent. Now it seems to be affecting the mother. The only person that seemed to not be affected throughout all this was the grandmother. Take that as you will. But eventually he claims that he got the okay to do an exorcism. Now, the church and the bishop of that church will neither confirm nor deny this. They've been on record saying that we cannot discuss this. Now, they're not saying we did. They're not saying we didn't. But they're definitely not getting out there and be like, yeah, we said go get him, champ. The guy that we deemed so unqualified before that we told him to go talk to somebody that actually performed an exorcism. He claims, like I said, he says that he got the rights to do it, but there is no backup to that. They will not say verbatim, we gave him the go ahead. Now, the first exorcism he performed was on the house itself. He says it went off on without a hitch. He said he did it in 3 different languages. He didn't say what 3 languages he did it in. Second one, he opted to do on the mother, which to me, like, the mother was just now starting to act a little squirrely. I wonder what made you discern to do it on the mother over the kids, especially the kid that did the moonwalk up the damn wall. You figured that would be the first one, you know?
Well, in my very limited experience from what I hear, via the grapevine, the longer possession occurs, the harder it can be to exorcise. So you could say that the priest justified doing the mother, that the mother would be easier to exorcise than the children. And so if he was planning on also doing the children, maybe he wanted to start with the easy one. Maybe he wanted the parental figure to be clean before taking care of the kids. Like if you're ever on an airplane, anything goes wrong and those masks drop, they tell you to securely mask yourself before masking like your kids or other people. Because if you don't, if you try to mask somebody other than yourself first, then you will ultimately pass out before you even get a mask on that other person.
I think that's a really solid explanation for that. Well, it's a long story short, none of these really stuck the landing. I don't know if he didn't have the blessing he needed. He didn't know of the experience he needed, but like stuff just seemed to amp up. And eventually the kids were removed. The state sent them away temporarily. They sent the two boys, or sent the boy, they split the boys up, put them at two different facilities, and also split the daughter up for a while. So the mom did lose the custody. They promptly moved out in 2012, and eventually she does get them back. Now, this is where we're going to segue into a different part of the story. Now, the family's out of the house and everything. This all happened in 2011, right? Uh-huh. So you think this is all happening in 2011. If you think that, if you're one of those people who think they're doing it for attention, well, you figure this is everywhere, right? You got cops seeing stuff. You got paid psychologists and CPS caseworkers saying that. You figure it's everywhere, right? In 2011, all over the media. Did not land in media till 2014. And that's when it got out. And the moment it circulated, somebody I love to hate, Zack Baggins. And everybody's going to be like, his name's Baggins. I don't care. He's Zack Baggins. That's his name. That's what we're calling him. That's who he is. Now, mind you, he is now, these days, referred to as one of the top paranormal investigators and occult knowledge holders in the United States, maybe even the world. And I understand this. I respect it. I respect his haunted items museum. I expect his knowledge. I do not respect his come at me ghost, let's have a fist fight attitude. I do love watching his shows, but you can ask my girlfriend when we sit there and watch them together. The whole time I just bitch about how ridiculous him and his crewmates are, because it's rough. But meanwhile, I digress. Baggins claims the night before that news broke, he had a dream that he was a spirit trying to teach other spirits how to move things on tables and stuff. And in doing so, a bigger demon comes down some stairs and starts to choke the life out of him. He wakes up to phone calls from multiple people, because this story is broke overnight about cops and psychologists and CPS caseworkers and the hell house that has 200 demons. And they're every course, so everybody's calling Baggins, being like, Baggins, new spooky, get your show here. First thing Zack Baggins does, he reaches into his Discovery paycheck wallet and just fucking buys the house. Sight unseen, buys the house. Who the family's not living in right now. Nobody's living in it. And so we thought. And he buys it. It's his now, okay? And instead of taking his show, Ghost Adventurers, or one of his 13 other shows down there to do it, Zack is going to film a documentary. He's going to film his own movie that you can watch on Amazon Prime, if you have a Prime membership, called Demon House. Zack Baggins goes, and he thinks he's going to talk to the family. And a lot of people would think that he's going to get to talk to the family. Of course, they're going to want...
I'm sorry. Before we go forward any further, I have a question. How did the news break? What caused it to hit the media like it did?
What caused it to hit the media is that a famous director heard about the story via somebody that knew the CPS caseworker.
Okay, so it's not that he heard it because a bunch of fans were spamming him, hey, you need to check this out.
No, the story broke.
The story broke because he bought the house.
No, the story broke because a director of, if I believe I'm right, it's the guy that did the paranormal movie franchises. Not the paranormal movie, the Conjuring movie franchises. Heard about it through somebody that knew the CPS caseworker, Mrs. Washington, and he researched it and saw what I told you guys about and showed you guys, the documents, the actual physical documents. Now, this is the guy that's doing The Conjuring, right? He loves that based on true event shit. He takes it and he bends it. He makes it what he needs to. He adds that flair. But he's got legal documents, and everybody comes to the theater for stuff based on true events. So that news, that breaks, and that leads people to try to be like, Zack, why haven't you done this? Why haven't you been in this house? What's up with this? So Zack buys the house, which actually, funny enough, causes conflict with the director, who, if you watch Zack Baggins' movie, the director calls him, and they change his voice a little bit and don't say his name because of legal reasons, but the director was threatening him, basically, being like, this is mine, and Baggins had the rights from the priest to film the documentary. But the director was pissy because he was somebody else stepping on his shit, bought the house, and is trying to make a movie. And everybody knows that Baggins is going to be able to get a movie out quicker than him because his is just going to be a documentary. He's got to get to Hollywood. He's got to do his casting. It's going to take forever to get out. And he's like, this motherfucker on this Discovery Channel is going to beat me to it.
Look at me, douchebaggins. I'm the haunted house guy. Not you, not nobody. No way, no how.
So they have a little piss match on the fucking film and everything. It was whatever. But Baggins gets down there. He gets to Gary, Indiana. And he's thinking, they're going to talk to me. They're going to talk to me. Well, guess what? They don't want the attention. Surprisingly enough, they don't want to talk to his ass. He tries to call them. They're blowing him off. He goes to the house. He looks around, and then he finds out from footage online of the family, the Ammons family, being on a news report, not for ghosts, but for their new apartments they're living in, having mold. So she's on there talking, and Zack's like, oh, look, there's the address. Let's go there. And they go there, and they won't even come to the door. They send the uncle from the earlier story to answer the door. They will not speak to Baggins because he stepped foot in the house.
Oof.
They don't want to talk. They would have we would have talked to you, but you went to that house, didn't you? And he was like, yes, I went to the house. We're not talking to you. Zack convinces the uncle to come sit in the car and talk with him. The uncle tells him some of the stories I told you guys, and tells Zack, he's like, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't go. The uncle, not allowed to come back in the house where he's living. They won't let him back in because he went and sat in the car with Zack, who was in the house.
Jeez.
He is on document saying that he had to go find another place to stay because his sister and mother would not let him back in.
Oh, that's a shitty way to get evicted.
It really is. They're like, no, you got secondhand ghost on you. Fuck off. Down the road you go. So Zack's like, oh, well, I've hit a fucking dead end here. He's like, I'm screwed. So he goes back to his house. Well, now he has something else to deal with. He has to deal with the squatters that are living in the house. No, mind you, it's a fiance. It's a lady and her fiance, right? The lady talks to Zack, I ain't never seen anything spooky in here, nothing this and that. And it's like, but I'll leave. Well, the fiance, the man, refuses to leave. He's not leaving until Zack is like, I'll give you some money, leave, right? And then the moment Zack mentions money, this guy's attitude changes. He's like, oh, I'll get my stuff. You want to come in and talk to my friends? And Zack's like, what do you mean your friends? Oh, I could tell you some shit. And Zack's like, it's weird because your fiance said nothing ever happened here. He's like, that's her story. That's her story. And then this guy starts to talk about the movie producer. He was like, he come here and he was offering all sorts of money. I'll tell you compared to what you're giving me, it's peanuts. It's peanuts. He's like, so, and Dak's like, well, your girlfriend says nothing. That's her story, not my story. He's like, well, you're going to tell me? He's like, I'm not going to sit down and tell you anything until we talk financials. So, that's really disheartening for a guy that just bought a house because he hears it's haunted, because now this person is clearly being like, nothing was happening until money was mentioned. Now he's like, I'm not going to tell you anything unless you pay money. Yeah, Long story short, fiance takes the money that Zack paid him to leave and goes. Zack doesn't give him more money to tell him whatever BS story he's cooking.
I'm about to say, I mean, you can't, at that point, it makes it hard to trust any story the guy might give you.
And at that point, that's what, in this, I'll give Baggins credit for this, he starts being disheartened. Because he's like, these people clearly wanted to make up stuff for money. He finds out that the producer did talk to the Ammons family too, and is offering them money for the story, right? So now Zack's wondering, are they not talking to me because of the ghosts like they're saying, or are they not talking to me because they signed some big Hollywood deal?
Yeah,
so
is there an NDA going on here?
He's very disheartened at this point. Now, then he starts to pick up his spirits when he starts talking to the caseworker. He talks to Miss Washington. He talks to the psychologist. And they're all like, Miss Washington is on documentary in a Skype with him, talking to him, and he was like, "You left. Why'd you leave?" And she's like, I couldn't stay there anymore. It didn't sit right with me." He was like, "But she worked for a part of the CPS for a long time where she dealt with kids' bodies, seeing kids burnt, beaten, seeing dead kids. And she stayed working there. But she says herself, she could not shake what she saw and how she felt. So she wanted to distance herself from that area. She's seen deceased children. She's seen abused children. And the thing that fucking haunts her the most is seeing some kid slow walk up a wall. You know, and I'm sure, you imagine, she probably got ridiculed for filing that paperwork. I imagine her boss wasn't pleased. I imagine people would make fun of her. You would think, right?
Yeah.
So, not saying that actually happened, because I do want to read into this a bit more and see and look into these documents and these caseworkers. But assuming that what she saw did happen, I would assume that watching a grandmother holding the hand of her kid, walking up the wall and doing a backflip back into a chair, basically, that's a break from reality.
Well, yeah, because that makes you question everything.
Yeah.
Beforehand, everything was at one level. You knew this.
Yeah, like and
then
what's real.
Then you see something that shakes everything.
Yeah, that's
Imagine that's jarring. I imagine that shake you to the bone. Like, you've seen abuse and you've seen death, but that's something that happens. You know this happens.
Yeah.
Then you see a 7-year-old walk up a wall and do a flip and stick the landing. Before then, that wasn't a thing. So what else is real? What else is out there? Now you start, if you weren't religious beforehand, are you now? If you didn't believe in ghosts before or demon possession, are you now? Like, I get that. It shakes you to your core. And, but she said everything that she saw. She was like, everything on that happened. And she was like, it shook her to core. She left. The local police will not come into that house. During this, somebody called Zack telling that somebody's trying to break into his house. So he calls the cops. Cops beat him there. They will not go inside. On document, on the footage, telling him, no, we're not going in there. He's like, you know about this house. The police officer is quoted as saying on the footage with his own voice, I have 20 pages of police report on this house. He was like, I'm not going in there. He's like, you've read about this house, right? He's like, you've heard about the boy climbing the wall? And Zach's like, yeah, I can get the keys and we can go in. And he was like, no, I'm not going in there. And refuses. Now, and there is a spree of people that have gone in there, people along with recording, CPS workers and stuff, that had a case of bad luck after they left, accidents, this and that. Now, I'm not going to go dive into that because accidents happen. People slip, people fall, people get burned on motorcycles. A lady got burned on a motorcycle, broke her wrist, broke a rib, all within the same month, same lady. That could just be bad luck. That could just be happenstance. That can't, or it could be tied to the house.
Yeah, or if a lot of people are breaking into the house because of the legend that's going on.
Well, these are all people who are directly involved, caseworkers, crewmates and stuff. We had the police captain, the veteran and everything, left the house. His police cruiser died, and his radio started acting up and stuff like that. And that could be coincidence too. That could be something else. I know if you just left that place and that happens to you, I'm sure it's terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, if I just left the demon house and then my car just sputters out and then my radio is like, well, hey there. I'd be like, oh, walking home, like I'm not doing it. But it just, so, Baggins, you know what he's going to do. He didn't just buy the house to have it. He bought the house because he's going to do a lock-in. But instead of being like he normally does, where he has a whole crew and everything, Zack does this one with cameras set up in the house by himself. And it's not just lock the doors. They boarded up the windows. They boarded up the doors.
Oh, jeez.
Zack by himself. Now, I feel bad for what's about to happen because I watched Ghost Adventures from the start. And eventually Zack Baggins starts wearing these what look like bullshit shade glasses that are like, he wears them because they make him look more sophisticated.
Got the Oakleys?
Now, but no, they're glasses, but they have really thick frames. But I thought it was like, he didn't wear them at the beginning. He's just wearing them to make him look a certain way or something. Well, Zack locks himself inside this house, and you get to watch the footage of this man coming unraveled slowly throughout the night. He's hearing things, you're hearing things because you're seeing the same stuff. And at one point, it ends with Zack sitting on a bed in a corner of a room by a wall because he gets in the corner. He does a smart thing, gets in the corner because you can see anything coming at you. And something happens to where he starts shrieking like a little girl, and then he has massive fucking pain emanating from his eye. That night, they had to stop it, and they had to take Zack to the hospital. A nerve or something in Zack's eye, there's a technical term for it, basically severed.
Jeez.
And those glasses he wears is because they had to do surgery on him, and those glasses focus his eye. Because without it, now his eye wants to go a whole nother direction because he has permanent damage. So I've been making fun of this guy with a legitimate problem for a long time, and I watched that and I was like, oh, I feel like an asshole.
You ableist.
I was like, I will give Baggins this. That sucks. Now, if who knows what caused it? It might have been stress. It might have been sheer horror. Something snapped in him, or it could be something more sinister. But the fact that that happened to him in that house is that's rough.
Yeah,
And that's something that affects somebody that is a pretty boy. He's a pretty boy. Now, the rest of his life, he has to wear correcting lenses because his eyes fucked for forever. He's got that money, and they're like, all we can do is we went in there, we did some surgery. You have to wear these glasses, though. And, like, the pain he was in was, like I said, they pulled the boards off there and got his ass out of there. Took him to the hospital. And guess what? This is also, mind you, this is the guy that bought Kevorkian's death van, the one that he euthanized and everything, and built a whole room around it to have it in his museum, okay? This guy lives and breathes on collecting paranormal stuff, right? So what do you think he does with his house? Anybody want to?
I assume he turns it into a museum.
My guess is he immediately sold it.
He fucking bulldozed it.
Oh.
The moment he got out of the hospital, he paid a crew to come out there, fill the basement with cement, and bulldozed it.
Oh, wow. That is serious. That is I am done level energy.
The only thing he has from that house is he took a section of the stairs and put it in his museum.
The basement stairs?
Mm-hmm. That's it. That's all he kept. And guess what? His ass didn't go get him. He sent somebody else to go get him.
So does he still do haunted houses and stuff after that? Or
Yeah, no. He still does his normal job. He still does Ghost Adventures. Still to this day, Ghost Adventures on the air, plus like 7 other fucking shows.
Oh, jeez.
He's like the Gordon Ramsay of Supernatural. Like, he's got shows for days, you know? But he bulldozed the house. The house that he paid for, sight unseen, spent all that money on, spent all that time on. Soon as he got out of surgery, cement in the basement, place scrubbed.
See, that answers one of my questions, though, because I was going to ask, like, why do these houses never end up just destroyed?
He did it. Oh, he put it down. He old yellered that house. He fucking put it down. But like I said, he kept the stairs. That's it.
It's like, sorry, boy, but this is your last story.
Because you got to think it's one thing for him to hear how things affected other people, how haunted items affected other people. He's got a house that damn near almost took his sight.
Yeah,
It's personal at that point, right? At that point, it's no longer, this is thrilling. This is something I can add to my collection. This is this. At that point, this is something that hurt me. This is something that meant harm for me, wanted to do something to me, and succeeded at some level.
Yeah.
And probably, I mean, if I'm him, I would be scared that I would one day get the nuts to be like, I'm going to go back and try again. But I can't do that if I kill it now.
What if instead of that thought process, he just did it out of spite?
He's like, you took my eye.
Yeah. He's like,
Good luck.
you think you tough shit, Ghost? You think you tough shit? Bulldoze the house.
Like, now you're a homeless ghost.
Yeah, good luck being appealing as the haunted lot.
You see that? You see that pile of dirt over there? Ooh, that's the pile of dirt of 200 demons.
But that's where the house's story ends, because there is no house anymore. There is no basement. Now, movie out is still being made for it. That's for sure. But now if people want to go see it, all they're going to go see is a vacant lot that's owned by Zack Baggins. Because he still owns it, because he doesn't want people rebuilding on the land.
Yeah, well, that's the next question. Like, what would happen if somebody built a house on top of the land?
You get a brand new house with old ass goats.
You just picture him tearing it down. It's like, all right, now I got a few bags of salt here.
Yeah,
We're
you got a
gonna make sure
realtor's like,
nothing
it's a
grows
brand new
here."
house. Frame and everything's brand new. Spirits are old. The what? No, it's fine. It's just a pre-existing haunting on the land.
Yeah, if they move in, you start seeing some ghosts moving around. Oh, don't mind me. Just checking out the new digs.
Oh, man, I've been living in the yard for 3 years now. But yeah, that's where the story ends for the house, technically. I mean, it's gone. It's no longer there. Baggins owns a slice of dirt in Gary, Indiana.
Well, this sounds like the first sensible response to a haunted house.
It really does.
Just tear the bitch down.
It was watching the documentary. I was genuinely surprised that he did what he did, because I was like, he's gonna find a way to move this bitch to his fucking museum, or
He's going to build a room around the house.
or he's going to, like you said, I was like, he's gonna make it a museum on its own or something like this. But no, he fucking destroyed it. He was done. It did him harm, and it did him dirty, so he did it dirty. He tore it down. Now, what I'm interested to think is, like, what's y'all's feelings? Like I said, I know some you both like have your doubts and stuff about paranormal and stuff. That's why I picked the first case for us to talk about, with some that actually has some merit. We have some documents from the government. We have people that you wouldn't think would want to be on paperwork.
Yeah.
Like, you got to think, you're the captain of the police force. Do you really want to go on TV and other stuff being like, ghost, I ain't going to that spooky house? That kind of fucking does you dirty as far as respect goes, I would think.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and it comes down to how superstitious are these people, for one, because a lot, if they grew up, thinking about ghost myths, it's part of it, maybe the part of the zeitgeist of that town.
If it's a particularly religious community,
Yeah.
that could play into it. I personally am of the this isn't even talking about ghosts in general, but like, I believe most religious experiences come down to a form of mass hypnosis, where, for example, you look at say a religious sect that believes in speaking in tongues and a religious sect that doesn't believe in speaking in tongues. Both of them are known for having religious experiences where someone feels infused with the love of the Lord, and they act out in whatever way is expected of that religious sect. If it's in tongues, you start speaking in tongues. If not, maybe it's you shout out in praise and then pass out, or something like that. And so that is my theory on religious experiences. It makes me wonder how much of that also goes into hauntings. And especially something like this, how much of the behavior could subconsciously be created by the people involved, even if they're not wanting attention. How much is I write this behavior off as being possession, so I am all in psychologically on believing this is possession, including subconsciously making it look more like a possession than it is.
Like, some of it can be explained, like, they started hearing the weird noises. They had the stuff with the flies. They started talking about the house being haunted. How much of it is the kids started thinking it was funny to start acting like a bunch of assholes and staging some of these things?
Well, see, in defense, I would say these are some very young kids.
Well, also in defense to that, though, like, if that's even the case, though, that doesn't explain the walking up the wall.
Flies in cold weather, that's hard to explain.
Oil
We're-
spontaneously dripping from blinds.
We're no strangers to flies here in Texas during December. Everyone knows it can get pretty hot here in the winter months. But whether or not in Indiana, I know you get below freezing temps there, so it's hard to justify flies in that. Walking up walls, like I said, if you have the entire family essentially hypnotizing themselves into the belief of exorcism, there are ways holding a person's hand, especially a small child that doesn't weigh very much. I could have a small child walk up a wall. And And to an outsider who's been told it's possession and stuff, again, I don't know the religious, and by the way, this is just me coming up with justifications. This is not me writing it off with these justifications, because this is a very spooky story. There's lots of official documentation, and there's a lot of background information you would need before you could really start trying to justify things. But just like throwing shit at a wall,
Well, like some of my question would be like, what kind of trauma do these kids already have from their home life?
Well, now, I will say that later on, people, the youngest son, later on in life, people thinks he would start deflecting stuff when he got in trouble with going back to said behavior.
Yeah.
Now, like, none of the other kids showed signs of that, but the youngest one, the one that walked up the walls, he has had meetings with other psychiatrists and stuff, and he has documented on saying that they think he uses it to deflect now. Yeah. Like, when stuff gets bad or he doesn't want to talk to something, he acts like he's possessed. Now, mind you, if that's lingering trauma, or if he just remembers from a young age the reaction he got from if he was possessed at a young age, he knew how the reactions he got and heard the things that he got away with. Maybe he took that as trauma and now he uses it to seemingly try to get himself out of issues.
And with these being younger children and a couple and a teenager, it sounds like, part of my question is, how much trauma did they have moving into this house? Because you said they were missing their father, and it was their mother and their grandmother. So what happened in their family life to cause them all to move together? And so maybe there's already some trauma that is built up from previous that caused them to act out. You know, like I could see like the oldest kid coming up with this prank whenever they start talking about hauntings. He brings in the other two to start staging some of this stuff. And then the youngest kid, then he starts internalizing it because he's a little kid and he just sees how people are reacting. And so then that started to be his way of coping, and how he express, when he's angry and stuff, is acting out in these weird ways that most people would think is a demon possession.
Yeah, there have been cases of kids essentially having bad behavior. Again, in very religious families, parents try and they start thinking it's a demon possession, and the kid starts just going all into it, essentially. And again, I believe that falls under that a hypnosis type thing where they expect me to act this way. I get out of trouble if they think it's because of this, and they begin to internalize it. Now, again, we're talking. You also mentioned like people walking up walls and stuff like that. There's a lot to this to have to try and justify, and there's a lot of missing information in order to help one justify it. I was saying missing information, unknown information, things that we don't know. All I will say for certain is this is a very, very spooky case.
Yeah. Then I'd be curious too. Like, they did these interviews in a hospital. Surely there were cameras.
They don't put cameras in rooms.
Well, I know not in the rooms, but in the hallways, for example.
There was footage of both of them fleeing the room. I'll give you that, in the hallway. But I will give Baggins credit to what you said, Matthew, about the hypnosis and everything. At one point, he was very much questioning, is this just a case of mass paranoia? That is something that he dabbled in. Now, like I said, there is a lot of stuff. There is a lot of stuff that has caught skepticism throughout the time. Like with the case, there's a lot of people that think, there's even family members of that family that were like, we think she was just doing it for attention and everything. Which, mind you, if you were doing it for attention, you figure it would have came to light a lot sooner than 3 years later. You know? Yeah. You figured you wouldn't be waiting 3 years after the fact to be like, look at me, when you're not even in the house anymore. Yeah. But like I said,
another question to ask is, how long does it actually take for some of this to pick up enough traction to actually be reported in the media? Is it just local stories? And then, like you said, it didn't even get picked up until the director for The Conjuring, heard something about it, and then that's when it started blowing up on the news. So
Also, her shying away from media too, though. You got to think she's not doing interviews. She's not. People are trying to interview her. Hell, you got Zack Baggins trying to interview you, and you're turning it down. But I mean, to play devil's advocate, I know I'm not supposed to be the Scully here, but maybe she was getting money from the movie. Maybe the Conjuring guy was blowing her a fat bill, so she was not talking to other people because he clearly had beef with Baggins from the beginning. So maybe he was like, I'm paying you this money. Do not talk to that Discovery Channel nerd.
gave her an NDA.
I mean, he
and
could have even gone as far as to say, "Hey, just tell him this when he tries to come talk to you." That's not entirely impossible, and if and when his movie comes out, maybe there'll be some kind of hints as to if he was able to get information out of her or not. Maybe he'll accidentally drop an interview or something that kind of gives up the ghost, as you will.
But like I said, that's my first case. I feel like it was a good median because you got big spooky, but you also got big quote unquote proof. You got government workers shitting their pants and running out of hospital rooms. You've got 37-year-old veteran police captains going on document and filing police reports being like, ghost scary, no go inside. And you've got Zack Baggins, love to hate him, losing his eyesight almost. I mean, I definitely it has cringe moments, but if you have time, go on Amazon Prime. Watch Zack Baggins, be Zack Baggins. You get to see interesting parts of him that you don't normally get to see. You get to see him start to lose wind halfway through because he's not getting anywhere, and he's starting to doubt what he's working on until, he locks himself in the house and gets almost crippled by whatever.
I would like for when we meet again to maybe
do some research.
Yeah,
when we
do
meet
some
again,
research,
just
and we
let's
can
have
spend a
talk.
few minutes before going into the next case. Just see if we could come up with better ideas on.
Yeah, I'm all for you both hitting the books after this, doing some research, and then we can have a segment at the beginning of things where we talk about the haunt. Because what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be switching weekly, or however often we do this. We might do this twice a month, once a month, but we're going to swap who does research. So maybe next time Matt's doing it and I'm just listening, or Brandon's doing it and we're just listening. But either way, we hope that we can continue to do this. I had a blast sitting down with you guys and talking about this.
Absolutely.
And I would like to thank Golden Image Studios for giving us a chance to try this out. Something I've wanted to do for a long time is sit down and do a podcast. And now here I am in a studio with people I like and Boze. So it was cool coming out and doing this. And I'm Logan, thanking you for taking a trip out here to Erie and letting us bend your ear with some spooky tales. I'm going to be signing off. This is Logan.
Matt?
Boze.
And y'all keep it spooky.
To support other Golden Mojo Entertainment productions, check out Golden Image Podcast, The Call Guys, and Murd Nerds wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts. To see photos and find new episodes of the United States of Paranormal, follow us on our social media. Twitter at TUSOPPOD, or Instagram at the United States of Paranormal, and Facebook, the United States of Paranormal. If you have a place that you'd like us to look into, or would like to share your spooky story that we can read on the air, please email us at theunitedstatesofparanormal@gmail.com.